ready, yeah? Ready? Phil, Liam, Rob? 3, 2, 1, go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Association. Welcome everyone at home, around the world that's watching this on live stream. Thank you to Getter UK and Getter Global for doing a stream with us as well, to Jason Miller and Dan Dukes. It's great to be working with people who appreciate free speech. It's never, when did it ever become the case that that was such a radical proposition? But that's what we're faced with today. So, in the spirit of free speech tonight, we're going to have a big, important discussion about digital ID, central bank digital currency and cash, but also about the platforms and restrictions and some of the issues we've been faced with recently. I want to start off with something else. If you look up the top of there, it says, "To thine own self be true." Many of you will know that's from Shakespeare. And I think it's really important that we need to remind ourselves about courage in these times, and to thine own self be true, and to actually be able to speak up and challenge and discuss civilly and win people over to the idea that freedom, rights, privacy and choice are really, really essential. And actually, if we don't have that, particularly freedom of speech, we have no freedom. Now, for the viewers at home, it's not a magic show. We're all going to show you that what we're going to do in 2023. What are we going to do, everyone? Take back democracy. That's exactly what we're going to do. So, we need to start off this evening not with Rishi Sunak's gleeful promotion of central bank digital currency, nor of Matt Hancock's attempt to blame care staff for deaths, or even the World Health Organization's attempt to galvanize digital ID and vaccine passports, or not even Nigeria limiting ATM withdrawals recently of cash to $45 to accelerate digital currency. But I have to start with an apology. We found out once booking the venue here, this beautiful, historic, important gem of London culture, which was first opened in 1929 and took its name from Moncure Daniel Conway, who was an anti-slavery advocate, outspoken supporter of free thought, and a biographer of Thomas Paine, that great author of Common Sense and more. But we found out that cash was not accepted at the bar, and it's a sign of the times. Now, it was already too late to change because, and we should say this is nothing to do with the staff, they're fantastic here, but these things get put from above and they get forced to happen. But when we looked at some other venues to try and see if we could resolve it, all the ones we contacted had similar policies. So it's poignant for tonight's discussion that the ever-dwindling ability to be anonymous in payment, and please do feel free to give them a flyer saying why cash is so important, and you've all got one on your seats, we're going to talk about that a bit more, and that we're distributing across the UK with our regional and local ambassadors and hubs together. And what we all have to say to them, very simple, what, no cash? And we're going to get them in cafes and restaurants and places up and down the country, and we think it's really important. Now, on to tonight's event. This is a really important one. We have a fantastic panel that has a huge amount of experience and insight into the issues that we are looking at to discuss, but also as a way that we think is important as Together to see what we can do about ensuring that our privacy, autonomy, choice, rights and freedom are not suffocated. The last couple of weeks has seen Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter result in some remarkable revelations of government and security service interference in social media platforms and restricting certain views. We have Toby Young of the Free Speech Union, which was taken down from PayPal, along with Us for Them, who had also had their account temporarily frozen, until many of you in here and many more others challenged this publicly. Toby will be telling us where his campaign is to enshrine free speech, which many of you will have sent an email to your MP today about. We've seen that Eventbrite, that we've used up until now, taking down events because some of their execs clearly did not like what was being discussed. And so now, as of today, we have stopped using them and we'll be having tickets run on our own site moving forwards. The CEO of the Bank for International Settlements recently told the world that the great thing about central bank digital currency was that they could track every transaction. We know that happened to some of the supporters of the Canadian. We know what happened to some of the supporters of the Canadian truckers who had their bank accounts frozen. But recent events in Britain have shown just how alarming controls can be, especially when Oxfordshire is implementing control zones for residents. Will the risks of central bank digital currency imperil our ability to make choices freely without being shut down? Cameron Parry, the CEO of Tally Money, has many views on this and as to why he set up his company, which we very much look forward to hearing. Now, back in the heyday of the inspiring possibilities of the internet and World Wide Web, Ava Pascoe launched Siberia, the first internet cafe, here in London, and rolling them out to Paris, Tokyo, and elsewhere. Eva went on to launch some of the first key online retail sites and is a veteran of the space and has much to say about the implication of the convenience versus freedom and cash. Some of us are old enough to remember Do No Evil, that strapline that Google founders launched with and was later jettisoned. Nico MacDonald has spent his career in information technology and the digital sphere, writing and teaching, and will be providing some historical context of what's changed and why. Now, the lockdowns forced many from various political backgrounds to rapidly try and understand what's going on. Some from the left were astonished at how many fellow travellers seemed to forget all the hard-won gains of the Enlightenment that were told were needed to be suppressed to keep us safe, while others, some conservative and libertarians, were equally shocked at draconian measures. Andrew Lowenthal has written internationally on digital rights and freedom and the risks we all face, so we're really pleased he's here this evening. In the battle, we like that, bit of musical background. You can see the movie together, let's do it. In the battle against COVID passports and vaccine mandates, many of us together were in the trenches. Most of us on a personal level lost some friends, but many gained many new allies, committed to defending our rights and privacy against a no-papers-please society. James Melville has been a consistent and vigorous campaigner, as well as a commentator to making sure the new digital ID, loved by the Blair Institute and many others, does not become a reality here. So we're very lucky to have them tonight. I'm going to talk a bit about them as well, but can we just give them a big round of applause to... I'm going to shut up in a minute because we're going to get onto the smart ones. But as Germany moves to make a new law to evaluate any transaction over 100 euros, President Biden excitedly talks about the coming digital dollar, and all the while our economy is seeing ever higher inflation with costs of lockdowns and living pain, businesses closing, wages stagnating, now worth even less, and too many people having to choose between heating and eating. Is all this going to be dealt with properly? Or will the technocrats attempt to impose rigorous measures? Will they be akin to China's social credit system as a way to control us? Now, on the note of elected and opposition, those with amnesia, as we see the damage of zero COVID and fanatics in China and elsewhere, we also see that the human spirit, courage, and being willing to stand up is inspiring and a reminder that no matter what the odds, it is always up to us to fight for what we believe in. When we do this together, we are always stronger. Finally, we're going to have drinks here afterwards to enjoy with us, mingle, and let's make Christmas a bit of fun because some of the doom-mongers want us to be perpetually at a state of crisis and despair, and we're not going to allow any of that, right? And I'd invite you all to join and get involved and make sure that 2023 is more influenced by all of us, for the care workers to be reinstated and compensated, for the online safety bill to be scrapped of any of the censorship and free speech to be made part of our sovereign state for each and every one of us, and for the public to be at the heart of things. That's you, me, us, our friends and family and work colleagues, not this nasty group of dangerous people they always want to talk about. Making sure that the technocrats do not punish us and that they do not win. So, finally, this is really finally, I'm going to leave that bit till later and keep you all excited. So, without further ado, I am going to invite Eva Pascoe to come up, who's going to speak first. Please give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much for the invite. It's really amazing to be here. I love the space. It's a wonderful space full of campaigning and vibe from the historical many meetings. So hopefully we can continue in this vibe. So I'm Eva. I'm Polish. I came to UK in 1986, escaping from one authoritarian regime, and I'm just hoping I didn't land in another. So I left after Chernobyl because I was convinced that the Russians were going to kill us, mainly for their incompetence rather than ill will at that time. And I wasn't far off. I was just about 30 years off. But we will come to that. So I was very lucky when I came here because I ended up during my PhD working with Tim Berners-Lee and observing how the World Wide Web was developing. And I thought, this got my name on it. So as soon as we could, we co-founded Internet Cafe Siberia. And then we discovered after we were the first in the world. This was before laptops, before people have emails, before Wi-Fi, before smartphones. So if you wanted to join the information superhighway, you had to come to our cafe. And it was great fun. But, unfortunately, reality is never quite as much fun as grand visions. So in the first day when we opened, I was hoping to help women to get online and, be a good cyber feminist. And then we had a line of 3 deep around the building, but they were all guys. And it took me about 3 years to bring women into the conversation. But when we came, God, we really took over. But the problem was handling money. And this is what I was going to talk about, because I'm technical specialist for payments. That's what I do. That's what my kind of day job. And part of the payment problem is that shift to cashless society. And I'm sort of part of the guilty element here, because I introduced probably the first cashless payment on the high street at that time, because we had a cafe and it wasn't particularly big. Some lovely people worked with me, like Leslie and a few others. And, we had loads of people coming and handling the cash for the email, because you had to pay £3.50 for half an hour on email. We just couldn't really manage this cash. It was like being lost all over the place. And eventually our colleague, Keith Tier, who then went off to a great career in Silicon Valley, thought there's got to be a better way of doing it. So he went off and with a couple of other people wrote probably the first online payment, which allowed us to measure the half an hour online for your email. Can you imagine being rationed email? And that email was like this $3.50, and you had a little timer. And when you were able to buy it with credit card, then the computer opened up and let you do your emails. And that was great. And I was quite amazed that people actually were putting the credit card into online form, because at that time, it wasn't really very secure. We didn't have secure socket layer yet. So it was a little bit dodgy. But, we were good and we were looking after everybody and we haven't lost anybody's detail. So that was the first time when people on the high street were able to pay in the public space in a cashless way. And when I realized that, that gave me the idea that actually people probably will be doing a lot of other things with cashless payments. So when we sold the business, I got headhunted to Topshop. And I co-founded Topshop Online together with then American CEO, not Philip Green, God forbid. That was much later. And we rolled out all the brands. And I remember people were saying, don't do that. Women will never buy clothes online. I said, just wait, just watch me. 3 years later, we were taking 25 million. Because women are busy. I was a young mom. I didn't have time. I love clothes. I love shopping. But I knew women won't have time. If you can do it on the way somewhere and where you are doing other things, your free time is for the park with the kids. Who wants to be shopping? So that was very successful. But again, we came across a whole array of issues and the cashless society. Because a lot of people loved the idea of online shopping, but they didn't have credit cards. Or they had bad credit rating, or there's some issues. So quite quickly I realized, this is not such a great idea without caveats. So let's look at the caveats. So when we're moving to cashless society, we just have to remember maybe where we came from. So, coins were around 3,000 years, first in China. Chinese seem to be first with most things. They're also first with facial recognition as payment. So China is now most advanced in smart mobile payments. And a lot of that is based on facial recognition. So this is where we're heading, which is great that we're having this conversation, because we might not be one following that particular track. But they were first, and then we learned quickly from them, and we used coins and banknotes for thousands of years. And then slowly, as technology was migrating and was making it all possible, we stopped using coins and we stopped using banknotes. Unfortunately, we haven't moved to nice things like shells and beads and barter and pigs. That was skipped somehow in the equation. We moved to boring bits, zeros and ones. And zeros and ones are useful, but also quite dangerous. So the useful bit is that cashless society is a lot cheaper, and it is deflationary. Because when I learned from my Siberia Cafe experience, to handle cash, you need security people, you need vans, you need a whole infrastructure. So when you are talking about the bar today, I'm all with you about the bar taking cash, but your pint would cost about 10% more. Cost of handling cash is about 10%, which people don't realize, but there's a lot of faff in handling cash. Handling digital money costs about 1.5 to 2%, so the retailer can pass the saving back to you. So that's where we kind of caught between the convenience and the moral dilemma, because the advantages are there, and also another advantage is, I'm sure you've seen the story about Michelle Monet, and where the money from the masks went right to her bank account, 26 million. But if it wasn't for digital cash flow, we would not have known that. If it was just a bunch of cashbacks given to her behind the lorry somewhere, we would have never known. So the advantage of digital cash is that there is track. There are digital cramps. We can find things out. So that's a good thing. Another good thing is also when you go abroad and you handle money digitally, you pay less exchange rate because it's easier to exchange digital cash for different currency than physical money. So, a bunch of advantages. However, when you hit disadvantages, they're enormous because you immediately lose any shade of privacy. So, we were obviously very well-meaning young cyber nodes back in Siberia, so we were not particularly tracking people, but I can tell you, I knew exactly what transactions people were doing online from my computers. And a lot of them were naughty things, but, I choose to look the other way, but we knew, and we could have done something with this knowledge. So when back in 2018, there was quite a big story, actually, a friend of mine broke it, from Bloomberg, when MasterCard did a deal with Google. They sold every single transaction data that you do as you go along through your day. Coffee, books, naughty purchases, some vice, some good things, everything goes to Google, which you might have a view about. They absolutely denied it, but it was proven, and they sort of wrote back, oh, well, it's anonymized, it's not everything, it's just samples, right. How does Google know to show you the ads about exactly the same thing you just bought on a high street? It's beyond any doubt that that's what they do. And they pushed further. I mean, some of you might be NatWest customers. Do you remember a few months ago, your NatWest Visa card stopped working? It became MasterCard. So that's the push that Google is doing, that they just want not some data from some of us, they want all data from all of us. And unfortunately, data is data. If it's data, it will be stolen, it will be sold. Anything digital is immediately hacked and sold by someone somewhere in a way that could be looking legal, usually not. So then we haven't even started talking about hacking, because when you have digital payments, there is a lot of actors involved in that process. It's not just between you and the retailer. There's about 3 to 4 agencies that take part in the transaction. Every single one of them is very likely to be hacked. It's almost impossible to protect digital data for however big agency. So just to finish it off, when you weigh up the ups and the downs, and you'll also look at the inequality of digital payment, how many people just can't hack the digital budgeting. I know a lot of people who are middle-class people with good education, they can't manage, they can't budget, because unless they, see physical stashes of 20s, it just goes, it just sort of flows through your bank account in a kind of like ethereal way. And you're constantly in debt. And the last thing is the buy now, pay later, which is this crowd of teenagers and also parents. That would not have been possible. Klarna would not have been possible if we had physical data. But because money became digital, it's possible to give people loans without them even knowing that they're borrowing money. So there is a lot of things to fight against. And in retail, we want to do better. We want to pass back the savings. We want to make it deflationary. But we're also acutely aware that every time you make a payment, MasterCard will take it and will sell it to somebody who will then come after my customers. So it's not good for anybody. And on that line, I shall hand over to my next speaker.
Very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you go. Thank you, Eva. So you understand, I've asked 3 speakers to do different opinions on the historical and the practical discussion, and then we're going to have respondents from a journalistic campaigning point of view, and then we're going to come out to you guys to ask questions and raise issues and have the debate. So, Andrew Lowenthal, thank you.
Great. Thank you, and also thank you together for inviting me to speak here. Also great to be on such an esteemed panel with other people. My name is Andrew Lowenthal. I just wrapped up after 17 years of being the director of a nonprofit organization that I founded called Engage Media. We predominantly worked in the Asia Pacific around issues of digital rights, privacy, surveillance, open and secure technology. So this is, but really on the ground and really facing heavily authoritarian regimes in Myanmar, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in the Philippines, Bangladesh, etc. So that was our bread and butter, so to speak, and the organization continues on without me now. But a lot of those dynamics, those authoritarian dynamics, are obviously now being imported more and more here. And it's also often very surprising because so much of that space, that NGO world essentially has this critique and this work that is done for decades and decades around authoritarianism, Enlightenment values, as Alan was mentioning beforehand, seemingly much more so in the West, and I'm sure James is going to add on to this as well. It's just getting cast out. It's probably not news to anyone here at all. It's quite a flabbergasting. I'm flabbergasted as the phenomenon keeps apace now. I think in this area around CBDCs, around digital currencies, around ideas is no different at all. So I just want to really quickly, because I think I have 5 minutes, and I see the clock's already at 1:30. So really quickly look at the areas around culture, law, and technology, which for me are the kind of key ways that I break these kind of things down. In terms of just the problem, I think one thing for me is that there's a little bit of an overemphasis on the CBDCs as opposed to just digital currencies. Digital currencies now are already programmable. If our concern is the programmability of the currency, that already exists and is being advanced, and it can be done through banks. It can be done on the commercial layer. It doesn't have to be done at the central bank layer. The problem around anonymity, for instance, however, is related to cash and therefore related to central bank digital currencies in the sense that cash is central bank money. So I think CBDCs are part of the issue. We need to look at it, but we need to not also only think about CBDCs because the banks also have vested interest in this. The story that Eva was just telling about Google and the data that they want. Does the state necessarily want to take over managing all social financial transactions? I would argue that it doesn't want to. It has very good friends. I'm sure Rishi Sunak knows many of them in the banking sector, and they're not about to go and tread on their toes either. So there will be some kind of convergence, some kind of agreed upon system that suits the banking sector and suits the state. But I don't think it's some kind of totalitarian, all-encompassing CBDC situation. It's going to be a mix. And in that sense, part of that mix that we should be pushing for will also be around cash and making sure that that level of anonymity still exists. The other aspect I think to think about, and again, I'm sure Toby will talk about this, is seizure. So that already exists now. So CBDCs will make that easier because you're in the same way that a bank now can seize your money because it's just represented in ones and zeros. CBDCs will be able to do the same. So you won't have that cash on hand, which is still your sovereign money. Again, another reason to defend cash. Really quickly, with my 1 minute remaining, I might go over a tiny bit. So just, yeah, on the culture side, I think this, I'm a kind of one of these politically homeless people. Now, I don't know if I come from the left where I am now. I don't know, I'm on that new journey. But I also think that this problem is not going to get solved without bringing people from the left on board, because traditionally they have been doing, they have been doing all of this work around human rights, huge campaigns previously. Many of my friends worked on campaigns against biometric ID in India. It was completely considered a mainstream human rights and digital rights campaign. Now, a lot of people aren't touching, you know, when there's this new announcement the other day from the G20, essentially pushing a very similar proposal, and also with India as the convener or the head of the G20 for this coming year, I mean, you can expect something similar. So how to bring progressives into the conversation back to areas of concern that they held so tightly previously and worked so very hard on. I'm not about to give up on it. One very quickly related thing, because we haven't really got past the cultural or the technical or the legal layer at all, and there are a number of people who need to speak. But on the political legal side, more there does need to be more legislation, there does need to be more protection, there does need to be some kind of, is it a Bill of Rights, is it a digital rights bill? I think Alan might have a few things to say about it later, but those protections do need to be built into the politics and the legislation, but do not forget the technical layer. There's many things that can be done, and I think that also might be where we're going next, where we can route around the controls and build our own systems. We don't need to wait or shouldn't wait for a Musk to come and change things. We need to be building our own open source technologies that are autonomous.
We're gonna be able to talk from the floor in a bit, so if we let the speaker speak. But
no problem, and that we will let the next speaker speak, and we'll look forward to getting to the questions.
Yeah. When we come over, you come over at the front. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
You'll all have plenty of time to ask questions, argue, disagree with us and everything in a bit. Free speech allowed and encouraged. Nico MacDonald.
Hi, I'm Nico MacDonald. It's very nice to be speaking to you today. I've been in this hall many times, and it's a place where there's been much important political debate over the last century. The South Place Ethical Society, as it is, emblazoned on the door. And in the square, Red Lion Square outside, which you might have passed, is the statue of Fenner Brockway, a pioneering member of the socialist movement in this country, who was once known for his advocacy for independence for African countries as the member for Africa, much as Henry Fawcett was once known as the member for India. And that's the spirit we should be approaching tonight's debate in. So I just want to reflect a bit on the origins of the discussion that we're having around the digital network society and the aspirational ferment in which that evolved, and the way in which, to some extent, that has been lost and degraded by our current political and commercial betters, so to speak, and some of the challenges that we face in thinking about how to transform, take control of, ensure that our freedoms are not restricted as a result of the undue control of these technologies by people whose interests are not the same as ours. And I think Together, just to start with, has been a great example of how people can come together to create a real opposition in this country to illiberal, unfair, discriminatory, and ill-thought-out laws and regulations. And the truth is now the opposition is mainly outside Parliament, not within it. So I just want to reflect a little bit on the history of the internet. So the internet was conceived, well, does anyone know when was the first internet connection made? How many years ago? Oh, I've got 50 already. Very good. Yes, about 52 years ago, between UCLA and the Stanford Research Institute. And that was an era in the United States when the civil rights movement had its apogee, where the Great Society was being put in place by Lyndon Johnson, where in Northern Ireland Catholics were fighting for civil rights in the late 60s and so on. In Britain, the women's movement was in full force, second wave feminism, fighting for equal pay, rights to abortion, rights to end violence in the home, for the rights to divorce without punishment and so on. And young people in this country and in the United States and in France and elsewhere were also fighting against the social mores of the older generation, the wartime generation, the strictures of the church, the monarchy, the establishment, a term only coined in the post-war era. Gay rights, sexual liberation. At the end of the 60s, most people will know, there was a great liberalization around homosexuality under Roy Jenkins as Home Secretary, women's and minority ethnic rights, the abolition of theatre censorship and other laws around obscenity. So it was a great time of freedom. And that's the time the internet was conceived in, the idea that you could connect people across the world. Okay, it was a project funded by the Advanced Research Projects Organization, part of the Information Processing Techniques Office of the DoD, the Department of Defense in the United States, but it was meant to connect academics, researchers across the United States to share ideas, to share computing resources, and very soon became international. UCL, just up the road, connected in 1972, Norway in the same year, and the internet became something which was envisioned as something which could transform the way in which nations related to each other, citizens related to each other, in the way that television and previous technologies, newspapers, radio and so on had been conceived, maybe slightly optimistically, but that was the spirit, that was the global village, Marshall McLuhan, you'll all know that, however naive that might have been. And although the people who created the internet weren't the same generation as the 60s radicals, many of the people who went on to actually create the next generation of the internet. Steve Jobs, who dropped out of college at Reed College in Oregon, you'll know about, famously said, I'm one of those people who think Thomas Edison and the light bulb changed the world a lot more than Karl Marx ever did, and we have this incredible chance to do that again in the next 5 years. John Gage, a Berkeley free speech radical in the 60s, co-founded Sun Microsystems. Stuart Brand, some people will know of, created the Whole Earth Electronic Link, one of the first online discussion groups in Sausalito in Northern California. So these people were taking the vision of the early internet pioneers, the Paul Borans, the Len Kleinrocks, the Vinton Cerfs, and so on, and making it a reality for people. But what they were also doing in some ways was trying to find a technocratic solution to the problem of liberation, to the problem of how we actually transform society. And they were disillusioned, to be honest, and for good reason, with the traditional ways that society was attempting to be transformed. This is the era of Stalinism, it was the era of very conservative trade unionism and so on. And ultimately, they were trying to find a way around how we transform society using technology. Now, that's not an undesirable aspiration, but we need to remember that people, not technology, are what has agency, what makes transformation. We create the technologies, we adapt it, we use it for our own purposes, and ultimately, the aspirations of that generation became technocratic, and you can see that through Blairism, through Cameron, and to the modern era with Truss, Sunak, and any other prime minister you want to name, to be honest, apart from Johnson to some extent. And we have to grab back that sense of agency, that humans are the people who are in charge, we're the people who create and make and adapt and transform, and we're the people who ultimately make the decisions about how we use these technologies. And we've got to fight back against the technocratic aspirations, ultimately, of the people who created the modern digital society, and we've got to reassert human agency and human control. And I think Together has been a very good example of that, and I think we'll see a lot more examples if we take ourselves seriously as agents of history. Thank you,
Nico. So thank you for those introductions. Perhaps some people in the room might think, well, that's all great, but we're faced with a really terrible moment right now, so what are we going to do all now? And next I'm going to ask Toby Young to speak. Then I should say that, Toby Young is the director, set up the Free Speech Union, as well as being the associate editor of The Spectator, but the Free Speech Union When it came along, I thought, thank goodness for that, right? Because, you know, there are all these takedowns and all these, you can't say that. And in the last couple of years has really made a big, more than a dent, made a huge impression on the British landscape. And so I'd like Toby to talk a bit about where you are currently. A lot of people know what's happened with PayPal and some of the things, but also any thoughts on some of this stuff around big data and technocratic control and what we can do about it, please. So, sure. Toby.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for organising this. Great to be on such a distinguished panel. Thank all of you for coming out on this cold Wednesday night. I thought I'd talk about what happened to me and the Free Speech Union and the Daily Sceptic, what I did about it, and what I'm hoping to do about it henceforth. So at about 2:10 on September 15th, earlier this year, I got a message from PayPal saying it had closed my personal account because I had supposedly breached its acceptable use policy. And I thought, well, that's a bit of a bore because I've got a few £100 in there, but I don't use it very often, so it's not the end of the world. And then I got another message a couple of minutes later saying PayPal had also closed the account of the Daily Sceptic, the news publishing site I've been running since the beginning of 2020, which started out as Lockdown Skeptics. And that was a problem because about 25% of our regular donors were donating via PayPal. And then the bomb dropped. A couple of minutes after that, PayPal contacted me to say it had closed the account of the Free Speech Union. And that was potentially disastrous because about a third of our dues-paying members were paying their recurring membership dues via PayPal. And I thought, you know, in every case, it was because we had supposedly, each of these different entities had breached PayPal's acceptable use policy. No more detail offered than that. We were offered no notice, and it made it clear when it issued these notifications that there was no right of appeal. They were closing the accounts immediately and retaining any money that was in those accounts. I initially thought it must be a mistake. And I wrote to Dan Schulman, the CEO of PayPal, and I copied in the CEO of PayPal Europe and their press and media operation, and I said, are you sure you want to do this? You know, the Free Speech Union has over 10,000 members. We've got over 20,000 supporters. The Daily Sceptic has something like 16,000 subscribers to its daily newsletter. We have over 2 million page views per month. Are you sure you want to pick a fight with me? And incidentally, Dan Schulman, the CEO, gave a speech at Davos, a keynote speech at Davos this year, the annual Alpine Jamboree of the World Economic Forum, in which he said that in order to build brand equity in a big multi-billion-dollar corporation, it wasn't enough these days to deliver a first-class product and excellent service. No, you had to advance the cause of social justice. And I think in his mind that meant shutting down the accounts of free speech advocates. This is woke logic. Anyway, of course, Dan Schulman didn't reply to me. Why would he? PayPal's market cap is about $110 billion. So he didn't reply. No one at PayPal replied. And it wasn't just our account that was shut down. It also shut down the accounts of the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, Law or Fiction, a campaigning group called Us for Them. Anyway, so I went to war with PayPal. I broke the story on GB News on Mark Dolan's show. I gave the story to various journalists. I wrote about it in The Spectator. I wrote about it in The Daily Sceptic with Leslie Caton's help. Some of you, I'm sure, know Leslie. She's involved in Together. There she is. Great woman, hero, legend. With Leslie's help, Us for Them and the Free Speech Union pulled together a letter to Jacob Rees-Mogg, then the business secretary, urging him to ask PayPal what they were playing at. Why are you shutting down the accounts of these campaigning organizations? They haven't done anything unlawful. Their views aren't unlawful. What have they done? What justification do you have for just seemingly out of the blue pulling the rug out from under these campaigning organizations, and also to look at whether there would be any way of changing the law to make it more difficult for big payment processing companies like PayPal to do that in the future. And 42, thanks to Leslie's help, 42 42 peers and MPs signed that letter, and the following day, Jacob Rees-Mogg told The Telegraph that he thought what PayPal had done was absolutely outrageous. It was a sinister new form of cancel culture, and it looked like Dan Schulman himself might be hauled before the Treasury Select Committee in the House of Commons. He obviously had a complete panic attack because within moments, incidentally, I should also say, meanwhile, like literally thousands of people were writing to me telling me that out of solidarity with me, with the Free Speech Union, with the Daily Skeptic, they'd closed their PayPal accounts. And I think literally thousands of people started to do that. Many of you in this room, I'm sure. Anyway, so Dan Schulman obviously had a bit of a panic attack. He immediately restored the accounts of Us for Them, and then he restored the accounts of my personal account, the account of the Free Speech Union, the account of the Daily Skeptic. But his problems weren't over, because later one of the reasons PayPal gave for closing down my accounts is it told the Times that the Daily Skeptic was guilty of spreading COVID-19 vaccine misinformation, which, as I'm sure you know, is a euphemism for the truth. But when we looked at PayPal's acceptable use policy, spreading misinformation wasn't actually on the list of prescribed activities. That was clearly an oversight, because as soon as our accounts had been restored, PayPal announced that it was going to update its acceptable use policy and include spreading misinformation as one of the prohibited activities, which would enable PayPal not only to close people's accounts, but to fine them $250. And if they would just keep that money. So suddenly, people started freaking out all over America. Elon Musk condemned the policy. A former president of PayPal condemned the policy. The hashtag boycott PayPal started trending on Twitter. This time, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people terrified that if PayPal decided, if Dan Schulman in his Alpine retreat decided that we'd been spreading misinformation, he could arbitrarily shut down their accounts, no notice, no right of appeal, and pocket $250. So naturally, lots of people started closing their accounts. Absolute unqualified PR disaster for PayPal. So PayPal then issued a notice saying, oh, we issued our policy update in error. We're not going to do that after all. Okay, so when PayPal, when Wall Street opened, PayPal's share price dropped by 5% first thing on Monday morning, and by the end of the week, PayPal's share price had dropped to $80 from the day it picked a fight with me. It was trading at about $98. But by the end of the week, which must have been the worst week in Dan Schulman's life, it was trading at about $80. And that means that PayPal had lost $20 billion in its market cap. I wanted to ring up Dan Schulman and say, Mr. Schulman, you fucked with the wrong Marine. But then I remembered that was a quote from the Jack Nicholson character in A Few Good Men, and he's actually the baddie, so maybe not such a brilliant idea to quote him. Anyway, that's not the happy ending as far as I'm concerned. It's not enough that PayPal has restored the accounts of the Free Speech Union, the Daily Skeptic, my account, Us for Them. It hasn't restored the account of the UK Medical Freedom Alliance, Law or Fiction, lots of other accounts in America shut down for purely political reasons. It's clearly going to keep doing this, even if it got a bit embarrassed on this particular occasion. So we need a change in the law to make it illegal for big payment processors and financial services providers like PayPal to shut down people's accounts for purely political reasons. That's a form of discrimination, and it should be against the law. If we let companies like PayPal arbitrarily shut down the accounts of people whose views they disapprove of, or withhold service from people whose political views they disapprove of, that'll be the end of free speech as we know it. That will be the beginning of the rollout of a Chinese-style social credit system in this country, except instead of communist apparatchiks enforcing ideological conformity, it'll be woke capitalists in Californian-based corporations. That's an illegitimate interference in our freedom of speech, and it's particularly illegitimate when it's being done from California. I mean, what right do they have to try and dictate the terms of public debates in our country, provided everyone is behaving in a perfectly lawful manner? So Thanks to all of you who helped urge your MPs to support the amendment to the Financial Services and Markets Bill this evening. The Minister has promised to do something, whether it's legislatively or to change the regulations. There's going to be a consultation. We'll be reaching out to you again to ask you to respond to that consultation about changing the financial regulations to make this kind of behavior unlawful. But I think we can do something about it together. If we stick together, we fight together, we can not just bring PayPal to heel, but bring all these payment processing and financial services companies who want to enforce this woke dogma to heel. Thanks.
Thank you, Toby. So we met Cameron Parry recently, and I was very impressed by both his background and what he's done with Tally Money. But Cameron, could you tell us a bit about what you've done and why, and a bit of the background, and then any reflections on some of the things you've heard as well this evening to start that off?
Well, first of all, I was looking at James thinking he's going to have to follow up Toby there, who's getting a superstar reaction. And now I have to, so thanks, Alan.
We've got some old school cash I'll give you later for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the order's changed now. I mean, anyway, but whatever. Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of something called Tally Money, which is a full reserve asset-based monetary system. We use physical gold as a digital currency. It's not a cryptocurrency. It's a new category of money. We are the first in the world to be able to issue individual banking accounts, sort code and account numbers that are denominated in a currency not issued by a government. It's only available in the UK, so I don't know where this video is going, but for all of us, it's okay. We get a choice now in the quality of money we can use and live in and use in an everyday account or as our primary savings account. It's pretty simple stuff. Every unit of Tally is a milligram of gold that we vault on behalf of our customers and that it belongs to them, because we're of the belief that people should be able to hold the money they earn in an everyday account, use it for payments, and that money should hold its value, maintain its purchasing power, and also remain in their legal control, which is something that we're really seeing come in culturally now with people trying to, block access to your own money. So one of the things that Toby's mentioning about a fine is one thing, but what they initially said, or what I read about what they said to the Free Speech Union, was that it'd be up to 6 months before they'd release their money. So, that's somebody's asset, that's your earnings. So when I first started doing, about 5 years ago, started working on the concept of Tally Money, it was really around economic principles. So I suppose personally I was just really annoyed at getting ripped off by the banking system, and how inflation devalues our purchasing power over time, which is happening from other people's decision-making processes. It has nothing to do with the time or the energy or the effort, whatever you did to get your money in the first place. We have tax in our system, so you don't get everything that you earn. Part of that goes to the government to be reallocated and to provide amenities and different things that we agree. But inflation is another form of taxation, and it starts, if my earnings and my time are being devalued by somebody, from the outside, it is really, to me, that starts to become a breach of the social contract. In the banking system itself, because it is a debt-based system, there's a debit and a credit. That's how money is created now. It's in the last 50 years, this fiat currency, fractional reserve banking system has been going. There is no asset underlying anywhere, and it also means there's no level of accountability, which is why they can arbitrarily expand the money supply in the event that governments find themselves overspending. And governments, to get elected, tend to overpromise, and then they have to find they need more than they're getting from tax. So it's not a particularly good system. It is designed to protect and benefit the bank to the detriment of the bank customer. That irks me a lot. These are just the reasons why I was annoyed enough to do something about this. the one that, there's more debt at a multiple of the debt that almost brought the whole financial system down 13, 14 years ago. So the cure for that debt bomb that was about to go off was to just pump in much more debt into the financial system. So that's obviously kind of dumb. And then the big one that I think nobody, no bank customer agrees to this threat is is the expropriation risk, is that bailouts wouldn't be big enough anymore because there's too much debt. So in 2008, governments used our taxpayer money because banking got a bit leery. It's a very fragile system anyway, fractional reserve. Your security's not there for your money as soon as you hand it over. It's in fact not your asset anymore. You're lending your money to the bank. You know you're doing this because they pay you interest for it. Interest is a payment on a loan arrangement. And then they leverage it up, and then, what you think is 100% secure, there's about 10% security left on that. Most people aren't aware that in the UK, only 3.5% of our money supply is ever printed. So 96.5% is digitally created and digitally stored. So there's many problems, but that expropriation risk, which is a bail-in, and that's where an individual bank that finds itself in financial, jeopardy, going bankrupt, I mean, the hint's in the name, that this happens to banks, that they can then expropriate a percentage of their savers' deposits, their depositors and savers, to prop themselves up financially. And so that it's not complete theft, you'll be issued with shares in that bank that is heading off a cliff, which is not usually the type of investment you want to take. Anyway, that's where I came up with working on Tally, and we've implemented this, and it's been live for a couple of years now, and with inflation increasing in consumer goods, we're seeing a lot of uptake this year in particular. Anyway, but one of the things so first of all, you're all welcome to check this out at the App Store, it's Tally Money, but one thing that has changed a bit, the macro environment's changed a bit from being one that we were getting economic harm to one where there's a real cultural shift. And just to conclude on my sort of view of being here, and I think Together's doing a wonderful job, by the way, of protecting the rights and liberties of people, is that if you really want to suppress dissent or any sort of questioning in society, the most impactful and immediate way you can do that, short of violence, is to cut off their access to their own money and their own ability to make payments, because that will affect you within hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. And I did swap the order. Yeah, it's like the power of the chair. It's terrible, isn't it? But there's a reason for that, because I wanted to finish up with James on this, just because a lot of you will know from James Melville's presence on social media. He's also from day one been very, very vocal in actually campaigning and challenging and raising some of these issues, and he's consistently doing it. I don't know how he actually manages to do that and also do all the PR and all the other work he does in his professional life, because it's an impressive amount of output. And I've also asked James to talk a bit about the context of campaigning and what that means. And James has actually been responsible for a lot of people meeting one another, and actually is another person that came from, not from the centre or the right, but came, from the left, and all these new people met, and it's been a very interesting journey. So, James Melville, over to you, please.
Evening, all. I don't like the phrase journey. I think it's the connotations are connected with X Factor and some dodgy talent shows. But I've been on a little bit of a political journey in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. I come from the left of centre, a so-called progressive, possibly a woke. The sort of person that Toby Young hated. I think Toby and I blocked each other for quite a long time on Twitter, and probably rightly so from both of our point of view. But my eyes were opened in the summer of 2020. I largely supported the first lockdown. I thought it was just government ineptitude. I thought it was just sheer panic, and so I went along with that panic for about 3 weeks. And then I moved into the summer of 2020, and suddenly there's collateral damages. But the thing that really woke me up was digitalization, in particular vaccine passports. Vaccine passports, for me, as a liberal, a lifelong liberal, the most authoritarian, draconian, illiberal measure that has been seen in the modern era, and it's been rolled out around the world. And I know that many people here would share that. And so that's when I went into the rabbit hole of becoming a conspiracy theorist. And so, the sort of batterings I get on Twitter are actually posting my wall and just laugh at some of the comments on the other side. And so the people who were my friends back in 2019, they all hate me. And the people who were my enemies, you're all here. You all seem to like me, even Toby. But the point of this, because I'm conscious of the time and I like to talk, is that I'm really concerned. I think where we are right now is much more concerning than even the problems over the last 2 years. I think there's a mission creep towards all things digitalization under the auspice, again, of safety and also convenience. And I'm also concerned while more and more people are looking at this, especially through a cost of living crisis and wondering what's coming next and getting angry with government, I think we need to find ways to stop the division and unite everyone against the people who are putting this mission creep in place to lose even more freedoms in the future, and that is largely linked around digitalization. I think one other aspect of this, with my tinfoil hat on as a conspiracy theorist, is I think all around the world, central bank digital currencies are either in pilot scheme or executive order stage in the States, or they're floating under the radar. Our previous Chancellor, now unelected Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is clearly a big fan, as is his frat boy pen pal, best mate, Justin Trudeau. These individuals are pushing it in this direction. Now, I understand that there is a need for digitalization because the world moves on, but what we shouldn't be losing is some of the assets that we still need, such as cash. Cash is vital. As a farmer's son, I understand the values of a circular economy. So I think from an activist point of view, to actually answer Alan's question, as I've gone off in a different direction, but to answer Alan's question, what we can do is localism. Too long the debate's been about nationalism versus globalism. Nationalists have been framed as bigots and racists and all of that stuff that probably I was saying a few years ago, but it was nonsense. But what we should be doing is moving the debate on a little bit further and having a really structured, nuanced debate about localism and the values of localism versus the bastardization of globalism. And I say this as someone who used to be a big fan of globalism. One way we can do that is circular economies. Use cash as much as possible. Get it in the communities. Find your local farmer, start trading with them direct rather than going to the supermarket and letting money fritter away out the economy. The more that we can put money back into the economy time and time again from a localized point of view, the more that we and other people and our businesses and our small and medium enterprises start taking control of our local economy. We have the control and power to do that. They can't take that away from us. Now, one thing that is quite interesting is that my biggest concern of all of this, and I'm conscious of the time, is that what we might start thinking about, there's a mission creep and it might be moving digitalization in the wrong direction and we start heading towards possible aspects of social credit systems. I'm worried about our kids' generation. Our kids, they're conditioned with digitalization. That's no fault of them, it's just part of their zeitgeist, their culture. We're the sort of generation of sort of the middle age to remember when we basically used cash and there wasn't mobile phones and the rest of it. And we probably bore our own kids and grandkids about how it's much better in our day and all the rest of it. But we've got to find nudges. We've got to find a sort of whisper in the ear within our local communities to talk about localism. But this is the hardest thing. How do we convince our kids that basically not all aspects of digitalization is a good thing, and actually what they need to be doing is creating their own system where they take control. They're not so reliant on mobile phones, because if we don't do that, everything we're talking about here right now ultimately becomes completely futile for the next generation. So the last thing I would say in my sort of journey, just to sort of bookend it again, is going from this sort of annoying Remainer, progressive, woke type person, and now I'm seen as that kind of just annoying Judas figure for that side. I'm all for the values of community. We can do a lot more than we possibly think. It's not just about putting tweets on, Twitter and getting retweets and going on the media. Each and every one of us can do our little bit about speaking to our neighbour, gently influencing. I'm a great believer in the power of gently influencing, using cash in the economy, finding relationships where we create circular economies in our local economy as well, and just getting back to a sense whereby we can control what we can control away from digitalization and do as much as possible to stop what is happening, and I'll finish on this, the great virtue con. What they're doing is they're using measures such as digitalization and the response to COVID, and vaccine passports, net zero being another one, wrapping it around technology and saying it's for in your own good, it's for in your own safety, and it's for your convenience. The only convenience and for your own good it's for are the people who are manipulating the situation in the first place. And what we've got to do is take our own ownership and control back from that. So I'll finish it off because I'm blethering like mad now. I just want to say a big thank you to Alan. And together, what they've done in the last year has been absolutely amazing. And we need more of this sort of community-based town hall debates, not just here, but in our regions as well. And I think what Alan's done over the last year is absolutely fantastic. And I look forward to not just this debate and speaking to everyone else after this, but also into the future. Alan's done a fantastic job. So thank you.
Thank you, James. I'm going to ask each person on the panel one question for a quick response. I just do want to say as well, I've had a message that loads of people are watching on Getter Global and Getter UK, and we've actually been joined by Jason Miller, so a big shout to him. He's up there. Thank you to everyone internationally, where free speech is encouraged. Ava, I know you wanted just to respond, so I'm not going to ask you a question. You can respond to one of the points that came up about digital localism, I think. Would you like to do that? We're going to make these points quite short. We're going to go through, and then I'm going to come out to you guys really quickly. So get ready if you want to come up and speak and think about your question or point. Ava, sorry.
Yes, I would love to respond to it because this is kind of my patch on which James is wandering in. So we probably could commute to work by horse. Would be nice. We probably could write with a quill pen. It's got like scratchy sound to it, but we won't. So with that, I would say asking kids to stop using digital services, it's up there with trying to commute by horse. However, I will meet you halfway. Digital gives as much as it takes. There is a way for digital localism, because when I was talking about MasterCard taking our data, we are getting really, really close to the point we don't fucking need MasterCard anymore. I can run a digital exchange for Manchester, for Edinburgh, for Glasgow, and ensure your money clears for very, very little cost. If we wanted to do local cooperatives digitally, we at the cusp of being able to do that. So the path of localism, absolutely, but don't bring the horses into it, they fart.
Oh, just one point to that.
Very quick, yeah, go for it.
Quickly. Yeah, I don't want to come across as some sort of technological Luddite here. I am aware that there is aspects of globalism that's good. Digital economy can be really good. It connects people if it's used in the right way. But what we can't do is allow our freedoms and powers and autonomy to be given up, so we end up in situations like we've had over the last 2 years.
So the question I've got, that I'm sure many people are thinking, well, I don't know, assume, but is there any way that we can use technology? Technology can always bring a lot of benefits to us, but in a way that our privacy and rights and choice can be protected. Is there a technological way? But it's not just a technological thing, right? It's also a political question. Andrew, you talked about culture and politics and technology. But from each of you, I'd like to hear if there's a way that we can harness this technology for human benefit without having the concerns, particularly of the state, but of others in terms of our privacy, surveillance, and all of that. And just your thoughts on that. I'm going to look for each of you.
Bitcoin. Yeah, I was going there.
Go on, let him go on.
Well, so actually I was going to stick up for Luddites and Luddism, and maybe I'm not sure, maybe the youngest on the panel. I actually think a little bit of Luddism is good, and I think we need a little bit more of it. I think we have to find a way to make it appealing to people. I actually think a lot of young people want to absolutely overwhelmed and digitally burnt out, and they're having problems, having anxiety disorders, depression, so many different things. And if there was a way, and I think there are various kind of small-scale movements out there that are pushing people to get offline, and there are huge rewards to getting offline. It does make you feel a lot better. At the same time, I would push for very hyper-technical solutions. Crypto is one. Then there's so many different people doing amazing work and some very dodgy and sketchy work at the same time in the crypto space. But I think, but not just there. There's been, over the last 30 or 40 years, an open source, free software movement that has been trying to build autonomous technologies that are outside of the corporate nexus. It sounds like that was a lot of the work that Eva was doing, and we need much, much more of that. We cannot put ourselves in a position where we are constrained or relying on these massive corporations. That's why I was saying that we cannot, hope for an Elon Musk to come and support free speech. We need to build the infrastructure, the decentralized infrastructure that enables it.
Okay, so can I ask, we're coming out to you in a minute, but Cameron, I want to come back to you. So people say Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, people talk about blockchain, separating the ability to be able to monitor things and have it autonomously. But when I've got a TV, right, I just want to switch it on and switch it off. There's a thing about technology as well, about how it's used and integrated, and if people can all go off and do autonomous things. I'm not sure many people even understand what Bitcoin is or cryptocurrency, right? And so how do you see it? Because you've come up with a solution that you think can work, but how do you see this more broadly in terms of privacy, surveillance, and what we can do and where it might go?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I think, particularly in a free market society, the innovation for the gaps, for the things that we want to see happen in products and the products we want to use, it comes from the private sector. It's never coming from the government side. It doesn't come from regulators. It does come from entrepreneurs and innovators and people like this, because we're always looking for solutions, because you get a good commercial outcome if you can provide a product that gives value to a consumer, and this is how you can create something that's sustainable and create wealth and so forth. So with those factors at play, and we still have a free market society generally here, and it's a bit over-regulated and whatnot, but we will come up with those solutions, and we don't have to have them all here. Certainly with Tally Money, I didn't want to speak about the problems with the banking system until I had developed a solution, not because it's the best fit for everybody or it's the be-all and end-all, and I heard Bitcoin called out over there. But at least while we're talking about these issues, there are some solutions that exist. It just becomes a very different conversation. I would say, just mention that I was the co-founder of and executive chairman of a company that went on to be the world's first blockchain industry company to successfully IPO on a stock market. So I do know a bit about Bitcoin. There were wonderful virtues of Bitcoin. There's terrible, terrible aspects of most every other cryptocurrency out there in the world. And it was with some of those virtues that I built into Tally.
Okay, thank you. Toby, where do you see this, the relationship between the political arena? You've made a very compelling case, but not everyone, where do you see this relationship between what can be done in terms of the technology and what can be insisted in terms of the political arena? How much do you think it's in one or is it both? Do they influence one another?
Well, one thing I think it's worth saying is that rather than try, I think, and somehow deprogram digital natives and turn them into horse and buggy drivers, I think one of the things you see with young people, partly because they are digital natives, is that they're incredibly effective campaigners. They have enormous power. And, middle-aged people, even quite powerful middle-aged politicians, are really intimidated by young people. We saw that with the recent Everyone's Invited campaign, started by a couple of teenage girls, I believe. An amazing, whatever you think of that campaign, it was unbelievably effective because of the way they harnessed digital technology to make their case. Greta Thunberg, another example. A 14-year-old truant had world leaders taking the knee to her. For the time being, young people are obviously hopelessly misguided and pursuing the wrong political agenda. They're using their power for evil. But what we need to do is persuade them to use it for good. Think how effective they could be as allies if we get them on our side. That's what we should be aiming to do.
Okay, thank you. James, you know, when you look back at things like the Arab Spring and even now in Iran and the bravery in China, you see that the technology, if it wasn't for technology, and I know some people are very suspicious of anything we see, right? But if it wasn't for the technology, being able to link up movements, protests to blow up and expand and link with one another. So there's all the merits and the virtues of technology as well as improving our daily lives. How much, though, do you see the relationship between the political questions of privacy and choice and insisting on that together, getting people out to argue that, and how much can be done just from the technological point?
Oh, the whole thing's a double-edged sword. I mean, I agree. I think in terms of some of the sort of the tyranny in Iran and rising up against and what's going on in China, although I do think China's slightly ironic that considering most of our media are saying, well, you know, well done them, aren't they brave? You know, standing up to vaccine passports and lockdowns, considering they turned a blind eye to when we were all doing it for 2 years. But going back to answer your question again on technology, technology is a double-edged sword. It's allowed that message to be amplified around the world. You know, people are getting their internet shut off in Iran and in China, but they're getting some of the messages and the videos out there, and it's up to us to share that around, because then we put political pressure on. And so, I'm not just saying all digital's bad. Far from it. Most of it's good, because social media is largely a force for the good, because it shapes debate. It connects people, but it also can be a social disconnection as well, where it sort of creates the wrong values, whiff of narcissism, far too many selfies, and actually way too much trolling. I think Musk sort of trying to clean some of that up. At the moment, it seems like a force for the good, but I think if we then move it to the next generation with kids, I think the benefit is that I think kids actually are becoming more and more politically engaged. And I think that, again, is because of the power of technology. I'm all for that. I want to embrace it. It's about freedom of speech. What I'm not for is the undercurrent of governments, technocrats, bad actors and corporates trying to use that technology to take away our power and freedoms. We should be able to call out that, but at the same time embrace the public information that technology can actually give us.
Okay, thank you. Look, Nico, this discussion about young people, older people and everything, but we've seen that Oxfordshire Council, for instance, are going to fine and restrict people if they move outside a certain 15-minute zone. We've seen that the C40 agenda with cities up and down the country. The idea that we're all on digital ID, which at the moment we've got in Britain, but the government is saying is not mandatory, but we've heard things being said before that they're not going to do, haven't we? To what extent, you talked very interestingly about the backdrop of, you know, where this all came from and technology and what was happening with civil rights and the big challenges and the ideas that inform some of those things. But it seems like many of those companies now become the most restrictive and go hand in hand with governments that are run by technocrats that are restrictive. What's the relationship from your view? And then we're going to come out to the audience, so get ready, right? Both upstairs with the mic and downstairs. But what's the relationship, in your view, between the political arena and the technological ability to limit or restrict or expand technology, but also have our privacy and freedom and choice within that? The mic, into the mic.
I think we have a broad context where politics itself has become very denuded, which is not an original point. You know, there's very little difference now between the two mainstream parties. As I said in my introduction, we essentially, I called it during the lockdown, essentially, we had a national government, essentially, or a coalition government between the Labour Party, the SNP, the Liberals, Lib Dems, and the Tories. So I think the challenge is that we, I come back to my original remarks, we don't see ourselves as being the agents of change. When we talk about technology, and the discussion about technology is a very new one, right? You can go back to Harold Wilson's, the white heat of the scientific revolution, is what he said in 1967, I think it was, not the technological revolution. The idea that technology has agency, that it's what's controlling things, or even that corporations are controlling things. I think that's a very new idea. But I think part of the problem is that we've accepted a kind of politics where it's an all or nothing. And I think it was Cameron who referred to the idea of safetyism. And I think we get these situations where things are presented as all or nothing. You've got to be on our side or you're against us. It's an old left-wing slogan, actually. And we reduce what government can do. The only thing it thinks it can do is protect us and keep us alive. What kind of an aspiration is that for government? I mean, government should be helping us to flourish, to learn, to live fulfilled lives with our families. It should be enabling us to work and so on. And I think it's so desperate to find roles that it can defend in society that it adopts these policies and then goes after them whole hog and then gets into bed with big corporates, you know, the Googles and Amazons and Apples and so on, because it thinks somehow they can deliver them. And they actually have credibility as organizations, because actually they have transformed our lives, or we've used their technologies and tools to transform our lives more than government has in the last generation. What's government really delivered for us in the last generation, where digital technologies have enabled us to do all sorts of things more cheaply, more globally, more intimately, to learn more, to engage more. And I think actually to the James's point about whether we go backwards, and I know, James, you've sort of defended that a bit, I think we've got to be very clear that the next era is going to be shaped, or is being shaped, by large-scale, what are called general-purpose technologies, things which transform every aspect of our lives in the way that the sail ship and the steam engine did, and telecommunications did in previous eras. And we've got to embrace that, but we've got to maintain our control, and we've got to maintain that everything has two sides to it, which is what we allowed to go in lockdown. It was like, you've got to do this, otherwise disaster. And the idea of cost-benefit, the idea of policy making that takes into account every constituency, every deficit, every possibility, that's something we've got to keep arguing for and assert. And I think actually that is coming back as we're discovering what happened in lockdown and all the externalities, all the effects of that. So as long as we keep doing that and assert that we should expect our future to be qualitatively, or our children's future to be qualitatively better than our future, just as, you know, for most people, their future is better than, you know, their grandparents' was. And that is something that we achieve because we are intelligent, cooperative, hard-working human beings that create new ways of doing things. And if we can assert that and remember that, then I think we'll always have an argument for why progress is needed, and progress brings freedom. And without freedom, you can't get progress, as the Chinese are going to discover very soon.
Okay, thank you. Right, now, everyone who wanted to speak and say, no, you're going to come up here, we're going to do it, because they'll only be able to hear you on the live stream and the recording if you do. So we're going to, where Charlotte is here at the front, if you come up and do a little line, don't panic anyone, right? Everyone's going to get a chance to speak and ask questions, and I'm going to do a round of questions and points, and then come back to the panel. And, yeah. Great.
I can't see her in the line.
Yeah. So you can say who you are if you want to, but we've just, if no, by the way, if you don't want to be on film or recorded, then you should know that we're filming and recording, right? So don't come and be in front of the camera is what I'm saying if you don't want to be, right? Okay. All right, go on. Go fire away. Yes.
Oh, hello.
Can we have the radio mic up front, please, guys? Thank you. The front radio mic. All right, go for it.
Hello. Yeah. So I came to.
Can you hear him? Can we have a bit more volume on the radio mic at the front, please?
I came to find out about the new digital currency that is it the UK's introducing,
CBDCs.
or is it just Canada? Anyway, I just wanted to know more about it and why it's bad, or that's why I came to talk tonight.
Okay.
So I've not really heard anything.
So why is digital currency good or bad?
Why is it
yeah,
good?
very good question. Thank you, sir. Yes. So now we got Hilary from Croydon who's going to say a couple of things.
Hi, well, I came to talk really about what we're doing in Croydon about keeping cash. I've got, I host two groups in Croydon and Beckenham, and we've come up with a campaign to keep cash. We're having what's called Cash Fridays. So on Fridays, everything our group does is in cash. And added on top of that, what we want to do is to go around to local businesses and get them to put a poster in the window saying we support Cash Fridays. And I think that I actually think that we could all in this room get involved, and not only just us, we tell people who tell people, and it just spirals like that. And I'm sure that if enough people did that, first of all, businesses are going to want to take cash, because they're going to lose out on so much business if they don't. And also, a lot of people will join in and see the benefits of cash.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. So just to say on that, the importance of local and regional groups and get-togethers and events is really, really important, and we'll talk a bit more about that. I know Danny's going to come and speak in a minute. Yes, the next one, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'd like to know whether the panel are aware that a lot of the things that you've mentioned, facial recognition, smart cities, digital ID, of course, require 5G to implement them, because that seems to become the elephant in the room in a lot of talks of these sort. And I'd like to know what you think of something I just happened to read today, which was written by Mike Yeadon, who I'm sure you all respect. I have a huge respect for him, on his Telegram page, which he said... He said, although I'm not an expert on 5G, I've read many peer-reviewed studies that make it unequivocally clear that the worldwide rollout of 5G is necessary for the technocratic domination of humanity via mandatory digital ID and cashless CBDCs. And it's being done at a pace and by the same corrupt perpetrators who are currently using the exaggerated public health emergency to ride roughshod over our human rights. He says, consequently, it's not possible to separate forced vaccination, and the planned demolition of society, and the installation of 5G. Opposing one while leaving 5G unopposed will not succeed, in his opinion. And he says, in any sane world, this would not be happening. So my question is, if we want to take back democracy, surely we should be objecting to things that are imposed on us involuntarily.
Thank you. Next one.
Hello, Charlie Downs from Wolves of Westminster. First of all, I want to thank you all for the work you're doing, because it was an excellent panel, and I think this is one of the most pressing issues of our time. With that being said, I'm maybe one of the younger people in the room. And my impression of my peers is that there is no conscience of this issue at all. There is no will to fight back. And my first experience of this was when, when COVID first, when the vaccine passports really first came in, and they were needed to get into nightclubs. And without a second thought, so many of my friends were more than happy to, have this vaccine passport if it meant that they could get into a nightclub. And my sense is that if a digital ID was necessary to buy disposable vapes or look at pornography, then many of my friends would be more than happy to have them. And so my question to the panel is, my sense is that to truly combat this issue, if the frontier, if the young people represent the, let me start again. My generation will be the generation that has to fight this issue. But my sense is that a far more fundamental change is necessary to instill my friends and the people around me with the will to actually fight it. Because at the moment, there is no understanding of the dangers of this issue.
Okay, thank you. Get his name. Let's find out who he is. All right, good. Yes. Yeah. Great. All right, thank you.
My name's Peter, and my question for the panel is this. The PayPal situation, is it not even worse than described by Toby in the sense that government is behaving in exactly the same way with financial sanctions on individuals? Now, I don't want to speak in defense of Russian oligarchs, obviously, but many of them, well, in fact, all of them are people who haven't been found guilty of any crime, haven't been charged with any crime, haven't even been accused of any crime. and yet they've been slapped with financial sanctions, which are the exact parallel of what PayPal has been doing. There is even at least one British blogger, Graham Phillips. I think Toby has written well about this, drawing attention to the case of a British blogger who is guilty of having the wrong opinion on Ukraine. And all his bank accounts have been blocked. Imagine how dreadful a situation where the executive, just on a whim, can block your account, just because they don't like your opinions.
Yeah, okay. These are important points. We're going to take a couple more, come back to the panel. I want to get through a few more, and then we're going to come back out. So we're going to have a little break. Yes, next one, please.
Yep. Hi, my name's Diana. And just some practical questions about the cash thing. I bought a drink and I tried to pay cash right here, and they wouldn't. It was a card only. So I said, well, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, well, nothing to do with them in there. So I thought, for something like this, is it possible to get people who will take cash? That's number one. I come across this quite a lot. There's a lot of places that are refusing to take cash. And I say, well, it's legal tender, but they still won't take it. So the other thing, just very briefly, was about the Tally account. And is it similar to Kinesis, which you're probably familiar with? And also, is it linked to gold, so the value of your money would go down if the gold value went down? Yeah.
Good questions, right. Okay. Thank you. This woman here, and then Catherine, and then we'll come back and then go back out again.
Hi, I'm Gillian, and it's a kind of two-part question. Mobile phones and phone masts.
Speaking to the mic. Please.
Sorry, mobile phones and phone masts and Wi-Fi and all that stuff, it emits non-ionizing radiation or radio frequency radiation. If I were to, this is a question for Toby. If I were to say that thousands of peer-reviewed studies have shown that they create adverse health effects in people, would you call me a conspiracy theorist?
You can come back to that question. Yeah, we're going to ask the questions and then we'll come back to it. Yeah.
Okay, and the next part of the question is, I'm actually electro-hypersensitive. That's why I'm dressed a bit strange, because you've all got mobile phones, and I'm trying to protect myself from it. So the other thing I want to ask the panel is, have they heard that next week the government is being taken to court in a case by Michael Mansfield? And oh, I feel a bit emotional about it. Because, can you read this out for me, please? That bit there, in bold.
Okay. On the 13th December, Michael Mansfield QC will lead a case against the government regarding the negative health effects of 5G and other non-ionising radiation. And the quote is, failure to give adequate information to the public about the risks of 5G and to explain the absence of a process or investigation of any adverse health effects. So just can the panel respond to that?
All right, thank you. And then Catherine, then we'll come back to the panel and go.
Hi, I'm Catherine McBride. I wanted to talk about banking regulation because I think that we've kind of, I'm a big fan of digital payments. I've been using them for 5 years. I used to run some non-profit organisations, and it was fantastic for keeping records. We knew exactly where all the money had been spent. So there's a lot of good sides to it. But I think we have let ourselves down with banking regulation, and it's often to do with the fact that we just tick the box, accept. Because years ago, your bank could not give out the details of where you spent your money to a government agency. But I think that got changed by Theresa May, who did it for our own good, because this was how she was going to stop money laundering from people who got ill-gotten gains in Eastern Europe or something like that. I can't remember what the excuse was. I think they caught one woman shopping at Harrods with £17 million worth of goods or something. It was completely spurious, but it's that little change in the law that we let happen for our own good. And as the other man said, that now they're taking money off Russian oligarchs for their own good. But it's only a matter of time before they use these regulations to just take money off us, because we're fans of Toby Young or something like that, which would be a good enough reason. So I think that it's a regulation, because there's a big difference between a central bank money and commercial bank money. And commercial bank, at the moment, they actually stand between us and the central banks. They don't want the central bank to take control of the money, because they lose their income, basically.
Yeah. Thank you, Gavin. I think if we can, at least a couple of people have a stab at this digital, because the first question was asked was really important, because it's our title, and digital currency, what exactly is it good or bad, or why? Does it always have to be or not? Who's the first taker for any of these points? Yes, Ava, go for it.
Hi. So digital money, it's a very wide topic, and it could range from extremely programmable money issued by the government and without any anonymity. So, for example, if Nico goes to the pub and orders too many pints, that crossed with the nanny state will be beeping in his pocket saying, don't drink anymore. So that's programmable money. In some states of America, if you go to have an abortion and the state is frowning upon it and you try to pay for it, it will not allow you to use your money to pay for abortion. So that's programmable money. But, how we're going to program this money, it's ours to decide. And I can tell you, because I worked on that, there isn't really a massive rush in the government at the moment, because they don't particularly want to have the answer that we haven't agreed, or there's no consensus, because there could be programmable money that we monitor and authorize in a different way, but none of the governments really has rushed forward. Nigerians tried, the Jamaicans tried, and it was not really working. So I think we are basically into 5 years of discussing it, and on forums like that, and thanks to Alan for organizing, forming the consensus. What do we want? Do we want to control Russian oligarchs? And I can tell you, I'm Polish, there is no such thing as legal money with Russian oligarchs. So apart from that, do we want to control people who committed crime and have some visibility over the funding through digital programmable money or not? But I think that's the question that we have to ask, and I don't think anybody has got any answers yet.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Just very quickly. Oh, you want to applaud?
Well, you can applaud them at the end. You can. I know it's great to have the enthusiasm, but let's
just for people who are wanting a really good introduction, both to CBDCs and also just the various layers of various types of money, stable coins, third parties, Venmos to PayPals, etc. Substack by a guy called Brett Scott. You just type in Substack Brett Scott. He literally put up a piece, I think 5 or 6 days ago, that is a really good breakdown of this that I would recommend you follow him. He also wrote a book called Cloud Money.
Okay. Good, bad, or you can come on some of the other points as well, obviously, whatever takes your fancy. Toby, you had a direct question asked you. Maybe go for that.
Yeah, sure. I don't think I would label you a conspiracy theorist. I don't think I'd label anyone a conspiracy theorist. I dislike the term, just like I dislike the terms misinformation and disinformation. And it seems to me to be symptomatic of a really important sea change that took place in the last 10 to 15 years. So there was a famous case in the US Supreme Court about 80 years ago in which the Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said that the best remedy for bad speech wasn't to suppress it, but more and better speech, and that was known as the counter-speech doctrine, and that was the prevailing wisdom amongst educated liberal elites in the West for something like 70 years. But that wisdom has now changed, and partly, I think, as a consequence of social media. Now, the conventional wisdom amongst educated global elites is that bad speech has to be suppressed. Things they think aren't true have to be suppressed. It's partly because they think that the only rational explanation for why the British people voted for Brexit, the Americans voted for Trump in 2016, was because they were misinformed by bad actors on Twitter and Facebook. They can't, nothing to do with a fundamental difference of values or the people just weighing up the evidence and making up their own minds. No, they'd been led up the garden path, led astray by these bad actors. So we have to preserve the integrity of the democratic process, suppress, ban misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories on social media platforms. And that, in turn, has led to much more radical action being taken against people who have unfashionable views. like PayPal, deplatforming them. Other payment processors, financial services companies refusing to give the Reform Party a bank account. And we saw this, the chap mentioned Graham Phillips, probably the most extreme example, someone whom the British government has sanctioned, so he can no longer have a bank account in this country. It means he can't pay his rent. So I certainly wouldn't describe you or anyone else as a conspiracy theorist. If I think you're wrong about 5G, then, you know, I think I should debate you about that. Instead of trying to smear you or cast you as beyond the pale, I should enter into a rational debate, challenge your views, present evidence to the contrary if I think you're wrong. That's how debates in the public square should unfold. It's very dangerous, I think, to label anyone a conspiracy theorist, to say that if you say you don't think women have penises, that's hate speech, and you should be banned. So anyway, so that's my view.
Thank you. But James, I want to ask you a question, because the gentleman at the front was saying about younger people, and it does seem that a lot of young people have not been brought up within the spirit of or the content of free speech, all the points that Toby's just made. But surely, like appealing to the public or winning arguments with anyone, with young people, that's incumbent on us to have those good ideas, the compelling ideas, the arguments to win them, to convince them to join us, surely, right? Isn't that about leadership and inspiration? How do you see that?
Yeah, it's about how you get the message across. I mean, I've got 2 teenage kids, and I struggle with that all the time. But it's about sort of nudging them and gently influencing, so they don't feel patronised, and also they feel part of the debate and they've got a voice. You know, one thing, I've made many mistakes as a parent, but one thing I think I've got right is my kids are pretty informed, and they like to express opinion on what's going on in the world. But touching back on Toby's point again, I think it is a major issue about the smearing of different opinions. You know, we've all seen this over the last 2 or 3 years. It starts off in media and drifts into social media and then goes into the public discourse. Now, it should all be about, and this is really important, I try and teach my kids this, asking questions and trying to find the truth, rather than basically going down a particular narrative because you were told, because a telly told you to do something. You know, for instance, I've often said this whole thing that, you know, if you question the response on COVID, it doesn't make you a COVIDiot. If you question what's going on in Ukraine, it doesn't mean you're a Putin apologist. If you question aspects around the response on net zero, it doesn't make you a climate change denier. You know, that's the narrative that's been developing. That's what I'm concerned about in terms of messaging with the kids. When they see these messages like COVIDiot and Putin apologist, some of it seeps in. So it's up to all of us not to play that game, not to smear people because they've just got different opinions, but actually to reach out to people with different opinions and have a respectful debate and never lose our cool and never get aggressive. And if the kids can see us doing that, that's the best value we can give them of all. They think, my goodness, my mentors, my aunts and uncles, sisters, parents, they're debating. And the best thing is that if the evidence changes, there's nothing wrong with changing opinions. I'm doing it all the time, by the way, especially over the last 2 years.
Great, thank you. Cameron, you were asked a particular question as well, but any other quick thoughts on the points? And then Nico, and we'll come back after
Yeah, there
that.
was the one about regulations and bank regulations, and commercial banks are a layer of protection with central banks, but I think that whole system is fundamentally and structurally flawed. And so what we actually need through technology is to have competing systems, and then that gives choice to the consumer, and the consumer will choose the thing that best suits them. If we're caught in a monopoly of money, we can complain all we like, but you're trapped in it. And so I think that sort of resolves that. There was just a question whether tally is gold. So tally is absolutely physical gold. That's how it derives its value. It is what it is. It can fluctuate up or down against a local fiat currency being like pounds. But over time, gold has proven to go up in value relative to fiat currency. So it goes up on average in the last 20 years about 7 or 8% a year against the pound. Inflation now we see is around 11%. You might get 1 or 2% return from your savings accounts from your bank. You know, you're better off with something that's got a high probability of going up. You know what it is. You know nobody's meddling with it. And devaluing it by design, I suppose that's something that really got my goat a bit with the fiat currency system. It's not even like I can have a good year in it. It's designed to go down. I mean, the central bank has inflationary targets of 2%. I mean, they never hit them, but you know, they're still there. They're designed to bleed that value out of your time and effort. And so on principle, I don't mind my money fluctuating a little bit relative to pounds. I know over time I'm far better off, but I'm immediately getting rid of the worst. The big financial loser to my financial well-being is to be sitting in fiat currency. And so I still need money, and that's the solution we were trying to come up with Tally, and that's what we provide.
Great, thank you. Nico, quick, please, sorry to put pressure on you, but I want to come back out to these guys and then come back again, and we've got to wrap by 9:30 so we can all have some drinks and carry on the conversation. Yeah, Nico,
I just wanted to
just speaking to the mic, please.
I wanted to defend Luddism. Ned Ludd, a West Yorkshireman, well, Southwest Yorkshireman, the Luddites were not against technology, they were against the way in which the new mill controllers were using technology to undercut the wages of craft workers, and that's why they destroyed frames and so on. They were not against technology. Luddism has become a metaphor for, or a simile for, the way in which we look at technology. But we need progress, and progress, technology is in itself neutral, right? 5G technology, digital cash, and so on. We've had all sorts of innovations in currency over the years. The cheque, right? Do you remember cheques, anyone? That was an innovation, a Scottish innovation. John Law,
Of course it was a Scottish
a financial innovator. That's why Scottish Union was a union of equals, James, just on the point we disagree on politically. You know, and we dealt with that, right? You know, where is there innovation in the way we use money, which has actually been negative? They've not been negative because we have pushed democracy and control all the time. You could perhaps argue that income tax, just after, you know, during the Napoleonic Wars, could only happen because we had a cash society, but still we came through that. We had the 1830 Reform Acts. The 19th century was a period of great social progress. I think we shouldn't fetishize technology. We should be in control of our own society and actions. And to the point about young people, I think the idea of digital natives, which has been around for 20 years now, is really patronizing. And it's really incumbent on us as adults to say, these are technologies we created them, all right? It's incumbent on us to know how to use them, to be inquiring and to learn how to use them, and not to treat young people like they're smarter than us, because they're not. They're stupid, they don't own the technology, and they'll break it. We paid for it, that's why they'll break it. All right, so just take some responsibility for things in your lives, not that you don't, you're all here tonight, and don't patronize young people. And I very much agree with the comments about showing them an example in terms of open debate, like this evening.
Okay.
And, you know, questioning, being skeptical, but not cynical.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've got lots of people. We're going to get them all in, so... Yeah.
Thank you. So many of us watching over the last few years have just been waiting until more people wake up, and then we can take action. Because we're all talking, but when are we going to take action? Because if we want to know where we're going, we just need to look at China. That's unfolding. That's the plan. Because the fact that they're dividing us up into zones so that they then roll out the digital currency, they'll immediately fine you and take it straight out of your account without you being able to challenge it. So we have to rally together, support Oxford, support Canterbury, support Cambridge. Otherwise it's going to be nationwide. We can't keep talking. We can see what's coming by looking at China. We have to make plans now. It's time to stop talking.
Okay, thanks. Although, obviously, in a democracy, you've got to convince a lot of other people, right? So that's why we do like to talk, but the panel will come back on that. So next, and then...
Hello, my name's Ian Simpson, activist, probably more of a strategist these days as I age and can't do stuff. Welcome, James, to the Bitter Reality Club. Much respect to Toby. A couple of things. The knowledge is power, we all know that, but knowledge is only really power if you apply that knowledge and do stuff. So the right to pay with cash is still legal tender. Can we enforce that in establishments? I think we should look into that and we should do it. Secondly, the central bank digital currency. The central bank is not a state bank. It's very important to understand this. It is a private organisation, and we should investigate contractual law in the UK to see whether there are ways we can object to this and refuse to accept it. It's owned by the Rothschilds, we all know that. Alternative economy, very, very good. Look into that.
Okay, thanks. Next, we got to try and make the points quickly. By the way, we're going to carry on talking about all this afterwards if you want to stay and have a drink and chat and everything. So it's not going to end. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we got some up here as well. So how many we got there? Right, great. So take those two up there, then we'll come back down. Quickly go. Yeah.
Yes, hi there, this is Yogi. Just wanted to say, for young people, do you think, sometimes we don't equate freedom with safety. We were concerned about freedom, but really we were concerned about safety, I think, over the last 2 years, like tyranny. What's the danger there? Is it safety or is it freedom? Both. It's a bit of both, right? Yeah. So is that a good way to, see it? And, with the vax and stuff, that was more about safety than just freedom. So using the word safety from our side as well. Also, banks, PayPal, are they a proxy for government tyranny? Which is what they effectively became, I guess, the PayPal situation. And just with Tally, I'm interested in, your obviously, your way of doing things, but I believe you're probably regulated by FCA. So if the government came to you, just as they probably did to PayPal, how would you react to that situation?
Good
if they
question.
asked you to do something?
No more 3 questions or points. One from everyone. One from everyone, please. But they were very good ones. Another young person with some good ones. Yep, go for it.
Just very quickly, I want to
Speaking to the mic, please.
I want to throw my support behind the ladies' 5G concerns. It's not just the health concerns, it's what can actually be done with frequencies. Everything's got a resonant frequency. Things can be done with that, not just health-wise. My main concern would be carbon credits and how they're going to link with digital ID and digital currencies. Just want to throw that into the bag.
Great, okay, thank you. Right, how many have we got? Oh, okay, yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, we know over the last couple of years there have been like interactions and collaborations between sort of government entities and technology companies shut down free speech, especially conservative voices. Toby, I want to know, how much have you found out about like where the order came from to shut you down? It couldn't just been PayPal. Was there an entity within the UK? I'm talking about like an entity, some bad actors in a donut-shaped building in Cheltenham who may have asked them to shut you down, maybe?
Great, thank you. Right.
Hello, my name's Beth, and I've been working at the start of some way of challenging organisations not taking cash, but I'm not entirely sure how to continue it because I swim regularly. And I don't know if you're aware, but GLL and Fusion Lifestyle, they're not taking cash, but they're providing a public service. So isn't that political discrimination? I wrote to Sadiq Khan, got a load of nonsense from some apparatchik back, but what's the next step?
Okay.
Hi, I just want to say that there are quite a lot of those economies working already in the country where I am. It's like we have a circular economy, someone mends your window, you bring them food or whatever. But I just had a quick question for Tally, which I've got a Tally account. If, obviously if you've got an app from an the App Store or one of those things, they can close that down, can they? Or can you be completely, can I use a Tally without anyone ever knowing what I'm buying?
Very good question. Right. Yes.
Hi, I'm David Young. I'm a big fan of Together and Taking Back Democracy. I would encourage everyone to sign up for the Together Declaration. Taking back democracy is absolutely what we need to do, but there's a sort of an asymmetry, because what we're up against is international agendas. We're up against big tech, big pharma, making hundreds of billions of dollars, which means they can put national democracies and representatives in their pockets, which they've clearly done, which is why when it came to lockdown, all the parties, as was mentioned this evening, were all in favor. You could excuse that maybe first time, but not 3 times, and yet they were all in favor. So my question is to the panel, what can we do to try and roll out this Take Back Democracy initiative internationally, given that we're up against international big pharma, big tech, World Economic Forum and agendas to amend the World Health Organization's charter and so on, which go beyond national democracy?
Great, thanks. Next.
Hello, my name's Ollie Dowland. I work in the area of democracy by random selection of citizens for public office. I want to ask, seeing these things have arisen from a democracy, in what ways can and should democracy be extended to counter these problems, especially in terms of accountability and bringing more citizens into the political system in a more systematic way?
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Hello there. Hello, I'm Kay. I'd like to really know how many of the panel believe that the digital currency system is completely linked to smart cities, the 15-minute cities that we're seeing rolling out right now, but more importantly and alarmingly, how it's linked to the UN 17 development goals that they have, sustainable goals that they have, where they're pushing us all to net zero. And the serious alarm with that, to me, that's the end game. You know, Agenda 30. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's unrehearsed, but money is power, and the greatest threat to the control of money supply is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to be attacked from all sides for whatever reasons, but it is the lifeboat for the coming disaster which is going to take place, and where central bank digital currencies will be issued in. Bitcoin is perfect money. I can send money seamlessly to anybody without anybody asking anybody's permission in the world. It's a complete one transaction from one human to another using a network of computers which are controlled by individuals. There is no CEO, there is no governing authority for Bitcoin. It is perfect money. We need to defend it because they're coming for it.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm just wondering, what about kids from age 5 to 12 where they can't have an account yet? It's the parents that has to provide for them. So my quick question is it lawful for these people to do it? And if so, how?
Okay, thank you. Next. Into the mic, please, so we can hear you. Thanks.
My suggestion is that we attack central bank digital currencies, because I'm sure that they will be used as a tyrannical measure against we the people. And my suggestion is that we think about all of the monies out there as being sound or unsound, right? So essentially the Bank of England has made our currency unsound, yeah? So they steal, as Cameron was talking about, they steal the purchasing power from it and can issue as much of it as they like for various reasons. And I'm sure they'll do exactly the same with CBDCs, right? They will also be equally unsound. And what we need is sound money. And I've got...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more of a statement. I work as a supply teacher in schools, and I can tell you, because I've spent a lot...
Speak up, please.
Sorry. I spend a lot of time talking to children in secondary schools, and they don't understand the extent to which their mobile phones are addictive and track them. Because I'm telling them that all the time, and they're completely surprised by it. They have no idea. So there's a huge window of opportunity for parents just to tell their children, those phones are designed to be addictive, and they're designed to track you, and they're not aware of it. And the other thing, in one school I'm working at the moment, is that they now have CCTV cameras in the children's toilets, which genuinely shocks me. Because one boy told me he'd been suspended because he threw a wet paper towel at it. I wanted to tell
we
you
need to know about that school. We'll talk about that. We need to know what that school is and find out about that, definitely. And Danny, who's a regional ambassador for Together and doing great work in Manchester. Right, go on, Danny. I think that's it.
Hi guys, saving me to the end after these great speeches and the great points by you guys is probably a bit like having vinegar for dessert, but I'll give it a go. I set up the Manchester meets for Together, and what we do is we meet every 4 to 6 weeks. We discuss how we can push the Together campaigns. We email MPs, councillors, we tell friends and family, share things on social media, discuss the campaigns and media appearances by Ellen. I wrote to my MP recently about the Financial Services and Markets Bill, so thanks to Toby and Together for notifying me of that. What we also do, and this is really, really important, is we headed to Manchester City Centre over the weekends and hand out flyers and talk to the public, push the Together campaigns as much as we can. We're not the only group that do that as well. There's other groups throughout the country doing that. And current flyers, we have, we're giving out the Apologise, Reinstate and Compensate the Care Workers campaign. On the flip side was this event. So I'm sure you're all here because of me, yeah? No, sure it's not. And I'm very, very excited to say we've got an event like this in Manchester on January the 12th. Now, I've come all the way from Manchester to see you guys, so you're going to do it back, yeah? Are you allowed to say who's speaking yet? No.
We can, yeah.
So we got...
Go
on, shall I? Go on, you do it anyway, go on.
That was pathetic, what I just said there. Sorry, go on. Yeah, go for it.
So we've got Dominic Samuels, James Woodhausen and Hilary Salt confirmed. And that's on the 12th of January in Manchester City Centre. More news on that will come out in the coming week. Is it Friday?
Yes.
Yep, on Friday. And if you've not been to a members' meetup, I definitely recommend it. They're a great experience. It's a chance to socialise and team up with like-minded people who recognise that our freedoms are under threat. It's also a chance to help spread news about Together and be more part of this great association you already are. If there isn't a meetup near you, set one up. That's what I did. It's a great experience.
Okay.
It's changed my life doing it, and if anyone wants any tips and advice on doing it, feel free to come and give me a shout afterwards. Prices are right up here.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Cheers.
And just to say that they've been putting flyers out in the city centre and doing that, and we've got regional hubs in Birmingham and various places in the northeast and elsewhere, and we want to have much more around the country. So in terms of action and doing things, but also talking to people, they're both things that we want to do much more of. So thank you for that, Danny. Right, an impossible task. I'm just going to be really ruthless now, right, because I want to say a couple of things at the end and we need to wrap. But 1 minute each, we're going to come back this way. We're going to start with you, Cameron, right? I'm going to just interrupt on the mic after a minute, right? So I'm sorry, but we're going to carry on talking, and this is not the end, because we're going to carry on discussing this afterwards in the bar and ongoing. So, Cameron.
Yeah, just to answer those couple of things about Tally. So we're FCA regulated. You do need to be FCA regulated to issue e-money accounts. So we do that under an EMI licensed institution. As far as owning gold personally, that is not a regulated activity. You are free to do that as a legal person in most countries in the world, actually, which is part of the regulatory strategy of why we've designed it this way. Let me see, if we were disconnected from the banking system, then we'd be using exchanges, so people could exchange fiat currency to come into the Tally system. Once you're in Tally, it's a standalone system, it's peer-to-peer, it has some of the attributes of Bitcoin, as I said earlier, in that regard. If the Apple Store stopped allowing people to use Tally, then you wouldn't be able to get it if you had an Apple phone. So we're not really seeing that yet, but I think they were threatening to do that to Twitter's app, and then Musk has pushed back on that. I mean, he's obviously a big libertarian.
That's a minute.
Sorry. But anyway, yeah, so I hope that answered it briefly, and if not, I might catch you later.
Thank you, Cameron. James.
1 minute, okay,
Yep.
that's tough. Smart cities, smart phones, smart meters, smart cars, smart money. There's nothing smart about control and surveillance. It is a con, but we have to embrace, as we said before, we have to embrace technology. But someone much wiser than me once said that basically to control the world, you have to control food, you have to control energy, control money, control health now, but most of all, data. Data has become the new currency. So as long as we can embrace how technology moves forward and pass on the right lessons to our communities and our kids and so on, we'll be fine. We'll keep ownership of our control. But the moment we let them, under the radar, push us in a particular direction that we end up losing some more freedoms, then we have to make sure we stand up for that. And everyone here will do that, but we just have to make sure that all bad governments are held to account and we make sure we get our messages out in the community. But
That's a minute.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you.
I was coming to the...
Go on, go for it.
That's fine, it's all right.
Right, thank you. Sorry to be so brutal. Toby.
So, who was behind PayPal's deplatforming of the Free Speech Union, the Daily Skeptic and me? Don't know. Could have been, a woke employee somewhere in California. Could have been GC, HQ. We've submitted a subject access request. We've sent them a letter before action in the hope of getting some disclosures. We may find out, we may not. Safety versus liberty. I agree with the point made up there. We have to persuade young people that hearing opinions they find disagreeable isn't going to make them unsafe. And finally, what can we do internationally? We can organise internationally. The Free Speech Union has sister organisations in New Zealand, South Africa. We're setting one up in Australia. There's already one in America. And what action can we take? Is it time to stop talking and take action? Yes. And the Free Speech Union has been taking action. It was thanks to us and our allies that legal but harmful is gone from the online safety bill. We're in the process of stopping the police continuing to investigate non-crime hate incidents. Why don't they come to your house when you're burgled? Because they're policing our tweets, not our streets, and we're putting a stop to that. And we're hoping to get this amendment to the Financial Services and Markets Bill to stop PayPal deplatforming people like you in future. If you want to join the Free Speech Union, it's only $24.95 if you're a pensioner or if you're on benefits, and we take cash!
That's the minute. Can we take cash, kids? Brilliant. Nico, into the mic. Nico, please.
That rousing bit was 15 seconds extra. I'll
Don't waste your 5 seconds.
I can't cover everything. There's some really great questions. And one of the best things about this evening is I can't remember an event where people have been so engaged and such good questions. This is like history restarting itself. It's fabulous. So a few brief remarks. FTX and the Twitter files have revealed a lot about the relationship between government, free speech, and big tech. And if we learn from those, if we make the intelligent comments about them, not that Trump would have been re-elected, we'll make a lot of progress. Being able to disagree is one of the key things about the new opposition. James and I disagree about a lot, but we're grown up enough to be able to have an intelligent debate, as he's emphasised. We need to keep that. We've got new media now, not just social media, but new broadcasters and so on. We're really making progress and actually creating a space for free, honest speech. And we need to have intelligent debate and respect expertise, which has been denuded by governments over the last 2 years, and around 5G as well. I don't know whether 5G is harmful to us. We need to respect what scientists say and put it in a broader context.
That's it.
We need a vision for the future about how we want to use technology. So stop fighting against things and start creating a vision and defend freedom, create more, and expect more for the future. Thank you.
Andrew.
So just to build on the embracing technology, I really do want to emphasize, and I think other people have emphasized here tonight, that there is a huge space out there, whether it's the messaging apps that I'm sure many of you have changed to using Signal or Telegram and other things. There's really hundreds of different alternatives out there that are not part of big tech, and I would really, really encourage you to use them. And if you can deactivate an account, whether or not it's a PayPal or something else, then to 100% do that. I think that's a very, very concrete action that people can do at an individual level, which is to get off the big tech and to get on to the other alternative technologies. And because there are many crypto and Bitcoin fans in the room as well, to also really look at that. That is tens of thousands of people, again, not all of them good, but many very good people who are trying to build alternative infrastructure, financial infrastructure, that can really be a counterpower to CBDCs, central banks, the PayPals and everything else. And that decentralized, autonomous, open source technology really is a pathway forward.
Thank you, Andrew. Brilliant. Eva.
I totally support it. It's very exciting to be here, and also super exciting for me to see so many women taking position, taking a stand, and coming and having a view. So go. Because all the other parties are really haven't really welcomed us, put it that way. And one thing I learned over the last 30 years as a woman, you have to fight for your rights every step of the way, because the second you take your eyes off it, they're gone, and they're gone forever. And also, please remember that together is a really big word, and we have to support each other, but we have to also support each other in learning. The future is not going to be simple. We will have multiple digital currencies. We already have multiple cryptocurrencies. It's not going to be simpler. It's going to be harder, but we are intelligent people. We can learn. So learn, join together, and let women have a voice, and let's fight for it.
Thank you very much. The mic, yeah, great, thanks. So just to say the first thing, we love you all to take one of these away, put it in your window, show it wherever you are. Hold it all up now again so we can get another photo, everyone. What are we going to do in 2023? We're going to take back democracy. We're going to take back democracy. If you want to make a donation, we've got some great volunteers at the back that can that you can do that with. I just want to say a couple of things that have been poignant about. Is the mic? Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. It's very stressful being shouted at. Right. Thank you. But there, it's good. It's good. I'm often shouted at. But that's the important thing. That's not true. Stop talking and take action. Well, actually, I think it's really important that with the sense of taking action happens, right? And we want to do it. And actually, we all campaign together. We have to remind ourselves of the wins. We campaign together out in the streets, around hospitals, universities, going outside MP surgeries, doing calls to action, councillors and MPs going to Downing Street. When a lot of people said, what's the point of even speaking to MPs, right? But not just doing that, but getting grassroots active people on the ground in local areas around the UK. And we stopped the vaccine mandate in Britain, right? We have to remember that. We've also just stopped universities, UCAS and the clearing system, stopping people becoming medical nurses or doctors and everything, insisting on a jab mandate because we campaigned and we did that, right? That was really important. As Toby says, we've been fighting on going to challenge censorship. And on the online safety bill, we should remember that, I mean, David Davis today said the point about encryption as well. We're going to keep fighting to insist we have free speech and the ability to make the points, because actually, as well as taking action, we shouldn't stop talking. We need to go out and win hearts and minds of all our fellow citizens and colleagues, because we might all agree in this room, and we may have 200,000-300,000 signatories, and we may have a growing base of members, which is great, but we need to go out and take this to the streets. Our friends, our colleagues, our neighbours, our associates, we need to get into the millions, right? Why don't we have the aspiration that we can really influence and change things in Britain? And I think we can, right? We've got the Care Workers campaign that we're doing now. We are launching a shadow cabinet where we're going to have a number of people that are going to be able to speak in the public to criticise a whole range of areas, whether it's energy policy or health, the imposition of digital IDs, and putting the public back at the heart of things. Take back democracy is ensuring that we as the public, who have been sidelined, treated with contempt, dealt with in a contemptuous way, we're saying we're not going to have that anymore. And we're going to hold you to account, and we're going to insist that we have our agency and we make ourselves heard together. Exactly. So we're going to make 2023 ours. So I just want to say, we're going to carry on talking now. We're going to end the thing. I want to say a big, huge thank you to the panelists. Let's give a big round of applause. I want to say a huge thank you to Getter. Whoa, there you go. To Getter and Jason and broadcasting it to Oracle Films. I want to say thank you to the venue, to Jason and the guys, even though we really, really, really are going to encourage you to take cash, because we can't come back and do something again here if you don't do that. I'd also like to say a big thank you to our volunteers, right? We've got a load of people that have always come out and help and put themselves on the line and commit, and it's inspiring. Charlotte's been working with them at the front, so they're also going to have some boxes if you want to donate in cash, and if any of you got crypto that you want to send them, whatever it might be, whichever by any means necessary. So thanks to the volunteers. Thank you. Finally, I'm going to say thank you to, as well as Charlotte, to Anna, Norris, Leslie, and all the team and Rob, who's at the back there, who runs membership and does socials, for being an incredible team, and also for helping me remember to do things, because I'm often forgetting things. But we've got these flyers, and we'd love you to take them to your local areas to talk to, not start having big barneys with people, but remember that we're citizens and we want to win them over to our idea, right? Which is that we want to engage them. We want to win hearts and minds and say, let's have cash. Let's encourage them in this discussion, like we do with care workers. We want to win over people to the idea when sometimes they have different views to us, right? Let's not allow the government and the opposition to tell us that we have to be divided around all these issues. Let's not allow them to get us all fighting amongst ourselves. Let us win the hearts and minds. If we've got the best arguments and ideas, and I think largely we do, let's have the confidence and go out and convince them and win it. So if you can all take some of these flyers as well, and speak in the local area. And finally, I'd love you all to join as a member if you would do. Let's have a drink and a chat and carry this on. Let's go out in 2023, take back democracy together. Thank you very much, everyone.